Hey everybody, this is Kenny with another edition of the Yak with Mac. Welcome back. It's me riding solo today, and I'm talking about one topic. What's the one thing I've seen as a thread through all the great leaders that I've interviewed this year? Relatability. Just relate. We'll talk about it. Listen in. Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny with another edition of the Yak with Mac, riding solo again today. Don't worry though. I have got some great guests coming up next week, a couple of really, really terrific leaders over the next coming weeks. And so I wanted to talk to you. And this time of year, for those of you who've known me, you've heard me say this a lot. But this time of year, as we're now into November, if you can believe that, my brain starts to really work overtime. I really start to think about the year, even though there's a lot of year left, right? There's 2 more months, November and December, but I really start to think about next year. I start to think about 2022. I start to think about what are some things that I need to do to get better at as a better leader, as a better person in 2022. But one of the best parts that I like to start doing now is like to start to reflect on this past year and what were some things that went well for us and went well for me. And one of the things as I reflected is the opportunity I've gotten through this podcast to just talk to not good, not great, but some spectacular leaders in our organization. And that has just made me feel so encouraged about the future of our organization. And here's the message I want to give today, though, because as I started to think about this and I'm taking some notes, and if you see me glance down, I have some notes because I want to make sure I make all my points. But as I was taking notes this morning, looking back at some of my previous podcasts, listening to some of them, I started to try to put together, is there one or two qualities, and there's more than that, but I wanted to narrow it down to one quality that I really, really see that these great leaders that I've talked to have in common. And so I want to talk about that. And for me, it's an inspiration going into next year because I want that. That's what I want to be. That's what I want to do. And I'm hoping you, as maybe an emerging new leader, maybe as a veteran leader, that you start to think about what I'm about to say in a second. You see, if I were to ask you what's the top two or three qualities that a successful leader should have today, forget about our organization, forget about that it's TMO, just in general, what are two or three really top qualities that leaders should have today? Well, you might say something like they have to be very organized. You might say they have to be great coaches. You might say that they have to make great decisions, have great decision making skills. You wouldn't be wrong in any of those. Those are very, very, very important for leaders to have today. Some of the stuff that was probably important even back in the 40s, 50s, 70s, 80s, 90s, some of those things, while they have to evolve, they probably haven't changed. But since these last 2 years, where we've gone through such a tough time as a country, we've gone through such tough times here in my part of the country, here in the Northeast, in New York, and you have those similar places all throughout the country that has gone through their own unique challenges. And we still have a lot of humans that work for our company. It's not robots, right? So all of those qualities are important, but here's the thread that I found with the great leaders that I spoke to. They just are relatable. They just know how to relate to not only their people, but people in general. They get it that as a leader today, with all of the things that we've been through, and each and every one of you have had stuff, right, over the last year and a half, just about 2 years now, that has been unique to you, that has maybe caused you to miss some work at time or caused you not to totally be there. Every single great leader I spoke to this year, they get it. They get that. They can relate because they probably, I'm guessing, have been through their own stuff as well. And while they know they've got to produce results, right? We're still a results orientated business. They've really cracked the code on how to produce those results. You see, they don't produce it by, hey, you just need to show up, period. You need to block it out. You need to leave it at the door, the proverbial door, if you work virtually like my team does and I do. They've realized they've come to a point, they probably realized a long time ago before COVID, but they've come to a point where they realize that that ain't easy to do. It's easy to say that, leave it at the door. It's easy to say, you know what, family problems. In my case, I'm downstairs in my home. My family problems are going to stay upstairs, and I'm just going to come down here and concentrate and focus and rock out. There's some people that can do that, but you know what? Most of us can't. Most of us are concerned about the futures of our family and concerned about our health and things like that. And the great leaders I found this year, while they are concerned with results and they drive results daily, they've cracked that code where they know that I need to spend the most time not figuring out how to get results. I need to spend the most time just listening and relating to and being vulnerable with my people. It's just some great lessons that I've learned this year as I've spoken to people on camera as well as off and been able to really ask great questions. And leaders have been great in allowing me to really dig in and ask some really good questions of them so that I can learn, but more importantly, so that the audience, you guys, can learn from them. So I got to tell you, that is the number one thing, being relatable. And so you might think that that's kind of easy to do, right? That's probably easier than, hey, picking up a process or being an expert on policy and stuff like that. Well, it really isn't. And here's, as I was thinking about this in the last couple of days, how I wanted to put this, I want to really talk about why a lot of leaders don't. And there are some things really embedded, I think, in our culture, expressions that we've heard from years ago that we still probably even hear today that cause us to hold back from that relatability. So let me talk about that because I think everybody wants to do that. And I think we sometimes don't understand that, hey, am I crossing a line or is there a barrier? And listen, talk to the great HR business partners that we have out there, and they can give you much, much better advice on that than I. I'm so not HR. But sometimes I think I just know. I know what lines not to cross, but I have to tell you, there's not going to be anything that prevents me from really getting to know my team and relate to them. It's funny, I schedule out all these syncs every month. In fact, I do this thing that I do weekly with my team. And it's so funny because we wind up probably for the hour or so that we might have scheduled, we probably wind up talking for about 30 to 40 minutes about their life and stuff going on in their life and what's going on there. And to me, that's just so much more important than even the stuff that we're going to get to business wise. Because here's the thing, if they're able to relate to me, I'm able to relate to them. It's really easy then for me to then talk about the business side. If I just started on the business side every single time that we were able or had the opportunity to talk, yeah, we probably would still have great results. And my team, by the way, has great results. It's not me, it's them. But the fact that we're able to build a relationship by me being relatable, yeah, you know what? I've never been in your shoes, but I get it. That hasn't happened. I'm one of the lucky ones that didn't get COVID. And so everybody else on my team did, unfortunately. So, but I can relate to that, right? I got you, man. I hear you. I absolutely hear you. That's so important to do. So let's get back to those couple of things that I'll say, why don't we? Why don't we? Well, there's this old adage that as a leader, never let your team see you sweat. Okay, I get that. However, and you shouldn't be a panic stricken leader. That's not good either, right? Because everybody's picking up on you. However, it's okay for them to see you human, for you to say, man, this concerns me. This worries me about how we're going to handle this next month. This worries me going into next week. What can we do about this? This concerns me. Am I panicked? Am I just, gonna shut down the lights and go home today? No, but it concerns me. And your team will see, okay, he or she is human. They're concerned, but they're looking at solutions as well. Here's another expression that I think holds us back. We always say, hey, don't take it personally. On the surface, that's probably true. There are a lot of business decisions that are made that have nothing to do with you personally. But you think about all of your personality that goes into your job every single day. It's hard. It's hard not to take it personally sometimes when things don't go as well. So if we do make it personal sometimes and then say, don't take it personally, we're contradicting ourselves a little bit. So a thing I've learned over the last couple of years, but especially this year, talking to other leaders, is that it's okay to say, I get that this affects you personally, man. I totally understand it. But now let's think about some things that's going to move past it. Let's think about some things that's going to move past it. So don't take it personal. One of those things that we heard for years that may or may not, I think in most cases, may not still be as relevant as it was maybe 10 years ago. Oh my gosh, don't you dare let me see your emotions. You know, you wear your emotions on your sleeve. That's not a good thing. I dare to challenge you that actually being a little bit emotional sometimes is okay. I think your people need to see that. They need to see that you got a pulse and that you really care. And yes, you want to see them as well as the team succeed in the worst way. And you want to get a little emotional about that. I get very emotional when my team does these great things. Every month we get these surveys back from our class and they just kill it. And I have to tell you, I run out of words because if they saw me, I get a little choked up every time I see these surveys. I'm like, man, behind the scenes, my team is just quietly just doing a phenomenal job. And I try to convey that to them in the most emotional way that I possibly can at times. Sometimes it's just through an email, right? Sometimes it'll be through a team call or whatever. All right, we've heard this a lot. There's no crying in baseball. Actually, that was from A League of Their Own, right? Tom Hanks. But there's no crying in business. There's no reason to cry. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. I don't want you to just be out there as a leader weeping every day or whatever like that. But I want to tie it back into emotions. See, we hold all that back because we've heard that for years. And again, not saying that you should be crying and stuff like that. And I don't mean to say it like that because it's okay if you do. However, just it's okay to also let those emotions go a little bit. Now, not the anger emotions. You still got to have a lot of self control, right? And self control also means that you should be weeping every day. So you still got to have that self control, right? We talked a lot about that earlier in the year. Emotional intelligence, right? That's part of. But it's okay to let those emotions know, to let people know how important they are to you and how important they are to your team and how what they mean to you in your life, in your personal life. I'm glad you're in my life right now. Not so much that I'm glad I work with you here at T-Mobile, but I'm glad that you are in my life. You've impacted my life in a very, very positive way. It's okay to say stuff like that to your team. The best leaders that I've talked to, I know that they have said stuff like that to their team because a lot of them told me so. Okay, let's wrap up. So I gave you a couple of things of why we don't. Just relate. Just relate. Along with relating comes great listening skills. You got to be able to just keep quiet and listen, but also banter about, have a conversation. I read an article recently that said that the best listeners are able to have a great two-way conversation as well. I thought that was really interesting because I've kind of always said great listeners are just quiet for for a while to just listen. I think that's important too, but I think there could be a good balance of good bantering. But not just listen, take that another step further. Relate to your people. And so taking all of these expressions that you've probably heard over the years, you got to be able to shift your thinking now just slightly and be able to, you know what? Don't take it personally. I'm not going to say that anymore. I'm going to try to take that out of my vocabulary. And don't let them see me sweat. You know what? I'm going to let them see me sweat a little bit. I'm going to let them see that, hey, I'm concerned about this. Hey, don't get emotional. You know what? Every once in a while, I'm going to get a little emotional. I'm going to tell you how I really, really feel about this in a really good way. And I'm going to tie that into, hey, you know what? If I let those emotions rip and my voice chokes a little bit because I'm so happy and so proud of you, so be it. But most importantly, I'm going to continue to relate to you and listen to you and really see you and really hear you. Okay, so lots more to come. We will see you next week. For now, this has been Kenny. This has been the Yak with Mac, and we'll talk to you next week.